Welcome to the Lean Blog Podcast. Visit our website at www.leanblog.org. Now, here's your host, Mark Graban.
Hi, it's Mark Graban. Welcome to episode 456 of the podcast. It's September 14th, 2022. My guest today is Jake Stiles. He's the CEO of Stiles Associates. You'll learn more about him in a minute, but if you'd like to learn more about Jake and his firm, you can find all that and more in the show notes or go to leanblog.org/456. As always, thanks for listening. Well, hey, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. Again, my guest today is Jake Stiles. He is the CEO of Stiles Associates. So we're going to learn more about Jake and the work he does in his own lean journey. But for nearly 3 decades, Jake has played a key role in growing Stiles Associates from being a niche recruiting agency to being the premier lean executive search firm in the country. I would agree with that assessment. So he's helped transform client organizations. He's placed top talent across a wide range of industries and segments, including manufacturing, consulting, healthcare, and beyond. So Jake has continued to build ties with thought leaders and to help spread lean throughout different industries. He's served on a number of boards, including AME, the Association for Manufacturing Excellence, and GBMP, the Greater Boston Manufacturing Partnership. Their website, you can learn more at leanexecs.com. And just want to disclose, you probably heard the ad up front before the episode that Stiles Associates has been a sponsor of the podcast since the beginning of 2021. So, Jake, thank you for joining us here on the podcast. How are you?
Good, Mark. Thanks for having me.
So I think we have a lot to talk about today. I think a lot that'll be helpful for listeners, whether they're perhaps looking for a new lean role, whether they're looking to hire people in leadership roles in their organization. But before we talk about that, Jake, I always like to ask guests, tell us a little bit about your own lean origin story. You kind of how and when you were introduced to lean, and why this is important to you.
Yeah, sure. So my father, Lynn Stiles, started this firm back in 1991 after several years as a partner in other retained search firms, global firms, and he wanted to start something on his own that was going to be more personal. Not the big players that were focused on number of searches, and he wanted to have a more personal touch with his clients. So I joined him in 1995, and it was just he and I for a couple of years, and one of the first assignments I worked on was building a lean manufacturing consulting division for an existing company that had 2 other divisions. But the lean manufacturing division was going to be new, and it was there were 3 people involved in it at that point, and they were all ex general managers from Toyota in Georgetown that my father had known. And so the task was to, and this firm was supporting the big 3 automotive at that time. So the task was to really understand what this firm was trying to accomplish and then help them staff up. And so my job very quickly became basically living out of a suitcase in Lexington, Kentucky, and recruiting people out of Toyota, JCI, and other tier 1 automotive companies that were going to join this firm and go support the big 3. And so my early journey was really focused around trying to attract top talent. And then once I got them on the hook, meeting with them, and Mark, at this point, it was, some of these interviews with these guys, and at that point, they could have been 20 years my senior. These were 3 to 4 hour interviews over dinner. And I was a sponge. I just, these guys would help me understand what good looked like, what good results looked like, and just kind of the ins and outs. They would bring me into the Toyota plant, show me around, and generally that's how I learned. I started, I just soaked it up. I had some great people that I met very early in my career that were very, very gracious with their time and very open. And it just continued from there. And so we took that division from 3 to about 110 people over the course of 3.5 years, with offices in Michigan, Kentucky, and then we built out an office in London as well for them. And, so from that point on, I was hooked. There were kind of two pieces to the story, right? You've got a client that comes to you and they share with you their story, basically their current state and where they're trying to get to. And they're sharing their pain points, and they look at you and they say, we think you can help. We need your help in finding the right talent. And I was hooked. Yeah. Right. And I said, I'll jump in. And so that's really how it started for me. And it's just continued to evolve. Yeah. And I still have a lot of passion around helping companies. I still have a lot of passion around going out and finding top talent and generally helping companies find the right fit. 80% of it's personality based, 20% is technical. Right. And just helping companies identify the right transformational leadership to help them to get where they want to go.
Yeah. Was it your father's intent at the beginning to have a firm that was really focused on lean and TPS, or did that just sort of fall into place?
No, it was his intent. So even when he was working in New York City for a large global firm, his focus had been working with small to mid-sized manufacturing companies at that point. He was doing a lot of C-level work for them. And one of the initial searches that really helped to position us was he was hired by the family that owned Wire Mold, which is a great transformation story, and helped to bring the CEO, Art Byrne, into Wire Mold. And just you go back and look at the results of that transformation, and it still holds up today. I mean, it's phenomenal. So that and some of the early work with consulting firms is really what positioned us. And it was more about us digging in and understanding what are the right questions to ask, where are the right places to look, what's the right type of training, and starting to build a profile, if you will, of what does good look like from a candidate standpoint. And and on the other side, what's not the right profile, right? So early on, he saw that, and prior to recruiting, he had been in manufacturing himself. So he had, I think it was a bit of a second nature reaction for him.
Sure. And when you talk about what good looks like, arguably Art Byrne as a CEO hire was a great example. That's one to hang your hat on. And Art has been a guest on the podcast here, and the lean community really looks up to Art for what he did at Wire Mold and what he's taught people and how he's influenced people afterwards. Jake, I was wondering if you could elaborate. I think it's interesting. You point out when looking for talent, evaluating leaders, you mentioned a variation of the 80-20 rule, I guess. You're looking for 80% related to personality, 20% related to technical skills. Could you elaborate on that? Like what are some of the personality traits that you are looking for? Are there any personality traits that give you pause?
Yeah, it's interesting. So in all the work that we've done and whether it be hiring senior consultants for a firm, or whether it be hiring a CEO or a VP of operations across 8 plants, there's a lot of similarities, right? There's kind of an obsessive persistence, if you will, to get better, right? It's that it's just that deep down drive to not settle. And I don't mean that in the way that it's someone that's going to come in and steamroll people. I mean, it's a way that it's that nagging, it's that itch, right? That, let's get here, but I think we can do better, and let's bring the people along as we do it. Right. So there's a trait or a personality makeup of, not settling,
Mm-hmm.
always pushing, but bring the team along with you.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's just a significant amount of leadership, emotional intelligence that's required to lead these transformations. And if you think about it, a lot of the calls that we got early on that we still get is you may have, again, an 8-plant division or an 8-plant company, and five are underwater.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And there's a threat of shutting them down and moving production elsewhere. And, when you go to search on something like that, you quickly realize there's a category of candidates that shy away from that. But yet there's another category that just raises her hand and says, wow, that sounds like fun. That there's safety, quality, delivery, cost issues, but there's also cultural issues, right? This team's been battered, or they're not aligned, or they're kind of off in the distance and they don't feel connected. So somebody that raises their hand for that and says, that sounds great, right? That's a different type of person. And so when we think about as a firm, transformational executives, it's those people, it's those type of people. They raise their hand for those challenges because they know if they approach it right, the results are going to be phenomenal.
Yeah. So, and I love how you emphasize, this idea of pushing, but bringing people along.
Yeah.
Having that balance of drive without pushing too hard, too fast can, I'm sure, lead to, could lead to failure in a new role. And so maybe there's a broader question to ask you, Jake. Guidance that you might give somebody who is new to an organization. Like they've got great experience, technical skills related to lean or TPS. They have the personality. They have a track record of success. What are some of the key points for somebody who's new to an organization that you would give guidance to make sure that they're more likely to be successful in that new environment?
Yeah, I think it's taking the time to get to know the team. Right. That's the first one. Really understand what's going on culturally and from a performance standpoint. Don't draw any immediate conclusions. Go see for yourself. And if the metrics aren't there, well, grab the data and develop them. Right. And let's create the foundation or the current state and make sure everybody's clear on it.
Yeah.
Right. And then clearly set the objectives. And do it in a way that's you don't set them and walk away. You set them and say, I'm here to help you. Right. And so it's a training opportunity every day. But I think, kind of the shotgun approach, coming in and kind of running over people, probably not a great idea when you're trying to build a sustained improvement and really kind of grab the cultures and the employees' hearts and minds. So I just, and it doesn't mean that you've got to take a tremendous amount of time, up front. But I think these candidates will know, these people will know when they're starting to connect with the employees and understand where the hot buttons are. But I think that's the biggest thing, is really kind of understand the current state and help the employee base understand where you are and why that's an issue. Whether it be whether it be a quality issue, whether it be a lead time issue, whether it be we're missing 80% of our delivery times, and really digging in. And the other piece, I think, is trying not to assess blame. Right? It's a group effort. We're in this together. Let's figure it out. And we may ask you to kind of put aside your traditional experiences and think a little bit differently out of the box. But we'll help you along the way.
Yeah. So when you talk about this need for transformational leaders, I'd be curious to hear some of your thought process in evaluating, let's say, bringing a candidate from one company into a new company, how to evaluate or to understand, let's say, if somebody is coming from a company that has a relatively long history with lean. You might describe them, nobody's perfect, but as a quote unquote lean culture where they know how to operate and improve within that culture. How can we evaluate if somebody can come into a place that's a turnaround situation? If it's their first true transformation opportunity, does it come back to that willingness of, I want to take that on? Or how do you help make sure somebody's really up for that challenge?
Yeah, no, good question. The willingness of the raising of the hand is the first signal, right? That because you may find somebody that's done pieces of that transformation that's sitting in front of them, but not all at the same time, right? Or they've done chunks at different companies, and so the raising of the hand, first of all, that's critical. But it's a lot of this. I mean, the technical piece, Mark. The technical proficiency and the experience, those are things that are not easy to find, but we find them pretty readily, right? We've got a large network and we know how to utilize that network. But it always comes down to personality, right? If you find someone that is 10 out of 10 technically, right, but they can't engage the workforce, it's the transformation's going to be limited, right, from a performance or from an improvement standpoint. So what we're focused on, so when we do when we pick up a new assignment, whether it be an existing client or a new client that was referred to us, we spend a lot of upfront time really understanding current state and future state, right? What are the issues? Let's talk about that. Let's talk about that for and really get into the details and dig down as to why do you think that's happening? Is it a leadership issue? Is it a product development issue, right? And really dig down and understand what it is that the problem that they're trying to solve. And there's certainly plenty of occasions where a client will come to us with one spec or one idea of what they think they need. And at the end of that conversation, or after talking to a few candidates, we all come to the conclusion that, hey, I think we were probably 60% right on this, but here's the 40% I think we're missing based on some of these conversations and the dialogue that we've had with candidates and the dialogue you've had with some of the folks that we put in front of you. And so it's always a work in process. And so we really focus on early and often alignment. We have to have access to the hiring manager and their team, right? And we are very open in terms of how we communicate. We're feeding back data from the candidate pool that might affect the search, right? And at the same time, we're throwing ideas out there as a team, as we partner with our clients, and that group, we're throwing ideas back and forth, just playing catchball. What if we had someone like this? You mentioned this was a concern. Do you think this type of experience would be helpful? So it's really getting aligned around what the client actually needs, in conjunction with what's available on the market, and then through those conversations, you start to get a really, really good sense of what's a style within the organization that is successful, right? And part of that for us is we'll use personality assessments, and we again, my father started this back in 1991, but when we were building out consulting firms, these were jobs. These folks were traveling 5 days a week, 48 weeks a year. Right. And so you had to love the work. Right. And so we started using personality assessments to understand, who's really reacting positively and who's really working phenomenally well in these roles. And we were able to start to build a profile of what that looked like from a personality standpoint. And so again, and then what we would do is we we would test 2 or 3 people within the client company that emulate or have the right style for the organization, either that works now or that they feel is going to work in the future. And then it never makes or breaks someone's candidacy. It just gives you another layer of information to look at. But it's just really helpful in providing that roadmap. So again, we've been saying it for years. It's 80% personality, right? And so our job really becomes not only understanding the technical piece of it, but what's the right style for the organization? Yeah. What's the type of personality that's going to engage this workforce?
Well, it's interesting, Jake, what you're describing. Elements of your search process sounds, there are clear parallels to what you were describing in terms of a transformation process for a new leader coming in.
Right.
Understanding the current state, understanding the issues, and then I think, as you touched on, a willingness to iterate. Yeah. Instead of saying, well, we have experience, we know the answers, we know exactly what's right. Like testing and evaluating is very much a lean thought process, it seems.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you think about the market today, and so we're a boutique firm. We're 12 people, right? And we are, we're very specialized around lean, but we work across a broad range of industries, right? But that need to have flexibility and really understand on the way into that client conversation that there's a group of issues that they're trying to solve, and let's really dig in as a team to understand what those are, but understand that they may also shift, right? And be willing to make that shift and ultimately help them find the right person. That's, for us, those relationships are critical for us, both client and candidate relationships. And if we do our job right, those relationships just continue to grow. I mean, the vast majority of our business is repeat and referral, right? And so we very rarely find ourselves walking into a shootout with another firm, right? Because we're so specialized, but also two, we've probably already been given a warm introduction.
Sure. So, Jake, one other question about sort of, a candidate, a person making a leap, kind of talk about from company A to company B within an industry. As you've done a lot of placements in healthcare and the service sector, I want to ask in particular about healthcare.
Yeah.
Kind of just general thoughts or reflections on people successfully making that leap from manufacturing experience into a healthcare organization. Yeah. What are you looking for? What are key success factors?
Yeah. It's a lot of it comes down to, again, personality, emotional intelligence, reading your audience, right? So when we did all the work that Ted Stiles and I accomplished with the Cleveland Clinic, and then the work that Ted's done beyond, that was really, again, trying to understand what they were trying to accomplish. And then at that point, helping them come to the realization that, look, there just isn't a pool of candidates like this that exists in healthcare. There wasn't at the time, right? And so we're going to have to think creatively about where we're going to find these people. And so instinctively, we knew that we would find these people in manufacturing. Maybe a handful had moved on to manufacturing, moved into service, but the critical training and technical experience and knowledge of lean and experience with implementation was going to predominantly come from folks that had spent time in manufacturing and learned it through years and years of experience in the right environment. So once we were able to make them comfortable with that, then it came down to really identifying who are the candidates that can make it in this environment, right? Because you're going to run into environments where they don't want you to come in and use all the Japanese jargon and really kind of try to create something that is meaningful to that team. And help create that process, right? you're using all the same tools, and it's always back to the basics, right? With the transformation. So you're using all those tools. You just may call them something different. And you may do that to engage a team on a higher level, or to create some ownership. So that was the tricky part, was finding people that were comfortable kind of walking into new environments that had showed success. So we looked at people that had worked in manufacturing. Maybe they worked across a wide range of manufacturing companies, totally different transformations, different challenges, but somehow they always were able to drive the right results, right? Sustained results. And so those were the people that we're looking for, the people that were going to sort of look at the opportunity within healthcare, understand and really appreciate the value proposition, because it's hard not to, right? And understand that, hey, I'm going to move from the shop floor. I'm going to be wearing a suit and tie every day. The work is the same. How I engage the team is a bit different, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Right. Because at the end of the day, it's all about it's relationships. It's again, understanding the current state and the future state, helping identify the gaps, helping the team see where the gaps were, and really pulling that team together and helping them get to the right answer or answers. So that's how we did it. There was, and that's how we continue to do it. Now there's a larger pool of candidates within healthcare, obviously. So you can find people that have transformation experience in healthcare, but I wouldn't let that. But don't limit your candidate pool just to healthcare, because there are a lot of very good transformational executives that have proven themselves in a variety of industries that can bridge that gap.
Yeah. And, it seems like, here's my observation about healthcare. I want to hear your reaction, of course, Jake. Seems for a number of reasons, healthcare is more likely to bring people in from the outside into, let's say, an internal lean facilitator role, or maybe bring them in as a VP of whatever they call it, VP of operational excellence or VP of continuous improvement. It seems far less common for healthcare to bring somebody in as a line executive sort of role. I'm curious if that's your observation as well. Have you seen people make a leap from kind of internal lean specialist role into a role more directly leading part of a health system?
Yeah, I think that's we have the same observation. Okay, right? And I think it's unfortunate that it doesn't happen.
I'd agree,
because I think you and I both know in the transformation stories in healthcare that we've seen, the ones that really stick up out there are ones that have had it may have brought somebody from the outside that didn't have that experience. You had a bit of an enlightened leader, a CEO that was willing to take some risks, and so I agree. I agree with that statement, and again, I think it's unfortunate because I do think that at times it can hamstring the transformation process a little bit. But on the other hand, if you have an executive leader that is willing to raise his or her hand and say, "Look, I just don't understand this. I know we need to do something different. I just don't understand how to get there because we're not getting there with our current process. Can you come and partner with me and help me understand?" And they're willing to make some of those make the changes required. That's a strong partnership as well. Yeah. Right. And so there's a benefit to that because the executive leader already knows knows the landscape, knows the players, right? And he or she can provide some ground support. But in general, and the right transformational executive should be able to walk into just about any environment and with a little bit of work, really understand where the pain points are, and most importantly, engage the workforce around how do we start to close those gaps.
Right. And, there's, maybe this is a hypothesis, but it would be interesting to see what would happen. Let's say if there's a large health system that's very committed to their lean journey. Just thinking out loud here, if let's say they had a system chief operating officer role, would they bring in somebody from, let's say, another industry who had done that same role in a different environment? Or if they were looking for a hospital CEO, would they bring in somebody who had previously been, let's say, a business unit CEO with P&L responsibility, a couple thousand employees? Like, it seems like there would be leadership experience and business savvy that would be transferable. But healthcare, again, this is just an observation, and I think it's unfortunate. It seems very rarely recruits from the outside. When it sounds like you and I are suggesting, gosh, there are transferable leadership skills and experiences that could potentially be brought in.
No, I agree with that. And again, if that's the case, but you've got an enlightened CEO, right? That has a little bit of that obsessive or persistence to not want to settle. Again, you link them up with the right personality and experience, transformational executive. I think they can make a win. I don't know that to your point, Mark, I don't know that I see that changing in healthcare. That's not like other industries, right? We in manufacturing or even in service, we can take a CEO out of a new environment based on their experience, or an environment based on their experience, and put them into a new environment, and they can be tremendously successful. But it just feels like a stretch that healthcare is not really willing or interested in taking.
So Jake, maybe let's, we've got an opportunity here to, pick your brain about some broader trends when it comes to, talent and recruiting and hiring and retention. As you're working with companies that are doing a search, how do you counsel them when it seems like a very competitive market for talent? The last couple of years, are there differences in the approach when it comes to retaining a firm for a search or just hiring in general?
The market, the landscape of the market certainly changed, and it remains a very, very competitive candidate driven market, and we remain very, very busy, and we are working very closely with our clients to help alleviate their pain and counsel them on exactly what you just described. So first of all, it's the early and often alignment, right? And the willingness to flex to changing conditions, right? And so we try to create that partnership, right off the bat with that client. I think in this type of market, it's important to be very much in lockstep with your client on sort of what are the boundaries of what they're willing to accept in terms of experience level. Is it someone that, is ready for that next step, or is it somebody that's been around the block a few times that, and so what are and so we have those conversations and based on our experience, we'll counsel them in one direction or the other, or we'll say, look, let's look at both and see what happens, right? We'll show you a range of candidates. I think the critical thing, though, that we're finding is, it's a conversation around, look, you hired us, we're going to align with you, we're going to go to market, and we're going to find you the best candidates. We're not going to show you 15 candidates, we're going to show you 5. But if we're doing our job right, if that first candidate is the right one, you need to be ready to make a move. So you need to have a buttoned up vetting process on the client side, and we talk about all this during our intake calls. and really have a good understanding of, what are the gaps you're trying to really fill? What's that experience look like? And we help them through all these conversations. And just know that if we put candidates on the back burner that are really good, we're likely to lose them. So what's happening now, and what has been happening for the last 2.5 years, is, our job is really to go out and find passive candidates, candidates that weren't necessarily looking when we called them. So when we do that, what is happening is usually because we got them to think about something different, and they've expressed interest. Usually within a couple of weeks, they've accepted a few other calls, right? And so there may be 2 other companies that they're in conversations with, and so the need for kind of accuracy, alignment, speed. But I don't say speed over thoroughness in terms of vetting. I think it's a combination, and really being in lockstep around, look, this is what we think the right candidate looks like. When we see it, we may push you to make an offer, right? And we can give you all the background data and have all those discussions around other people in the pipeline, and sort of and help you in that conversation. But if you need to move, or it's a second candidate, let's move. And because I don't think there's ever been a case where a candidate was interviewing with a company for 6 months, where at the end of that process, they get an offer, and they accept or they don't accept. But the reaction is never, wow, that was a great process, right? You always hear about the stories where, hey, I had a conversation with the CEO or the board on Thursday. They flew me in Monday, and by Wednesday, they said I was the person, and they had an offer to me, right? And so it's so I think it's just to be really clear and consistent on what you're looking for. And again, we go back to personality being 80% of the game. I mean, you may find a candidate. We may uncover a candidate and say, look, technically this person's got 60% of what you're looking for, but personality wise, they've got 110. You need to talk to this person. And if you can, let's get them in Friday, or let's get them in over the weekend. Let's have these conversations. And that personality match trumps everything else. Right. Because again, if you're looking for transformational leadership, it's around how do you engage the workforce, and you need the right personality, the right leadership experience, and the right playbook. Yeah. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. And you bring up a lot of, there's some key points there. One, I think the general lean thinking about flow, right? Yeah. Whether it's flow of a patient through an emergency room, or the flow of a product through a manufacturing facility. You raise a key point, Jake, is that, speed can't, we don't want trade-offs between speed and quality. So when we have an intentional process, right, when we're taking out delays, we can improve flow and make higher quality decisions that are also faster decisions. And, it seems like there's an opportunity, for organizations to look at their hiring process, and, not just doing the work faster, but eliminating the delays when it comes to communication or discussions. It seems like that's the key to being able to move more quickly and not lose a candidate to another offer.
Yeah. And just high communication. Our phones are always on, right? It's absolutely not uncommon for us to be on the phone on the weekends or at night with clients or candidates, or references, or just in an effort to continue the momentum.
Yeah, and it seems like what I hear you saying, I think, is part of this iteration is looking at maybe a profile of an ideal candidate, but then thinking through, well, if we can't find the ideal candidate, what dimensions are most important? Yeah, what are we willing to bend or take a bit of a risk on? Right.
What are we willing to flex on?
Flex, yeah.
Right. And that all goes back to that initial intake call, but the ongoing conversations you're having with clients around what's going on, what's going on in the business, what's changed. And, have you thought about this? Have you thought about this? Or I understand why you're asking for this, but have you thought about this? Right. And a lot of that comes from, look, we've got a good team. We've got a good seasoned team that is very good at picking up cues and just listening to clients and listening to candidates as they explain their journey.
Yeah.
Right. And things will just pop out and you'll say, that's, that really makes a lot of sense. And I'm not sure the clients thought about this. And you'll dig deeper in there and then you come back with that information and you're excited about it, right? You're in the process, you're part of the team but it's critical. I mean, that speed, flexibility, thoroughness, and alignment, those are all tremendously important in this market, for sure.
Yeah. So, Jake, what advice would you have for a listener who's thinking about changing jobs? Advice in particular about working with a recruiter, working with a retained search firm like Stiles Associates?
Yeah, this is Mark, as we've kind of touched on, and as we've talked about in the past, this has been a crazy market, a totally candidate-driven market, and the candidates that are making a move solely on compensation increase, it probably isn't the right thing to do, right? It's got to be a fit. There's going to be a correction at some point. I can't tell you when, but there's going to be a correction at some point in terms of compensation. And so you need to continue to make job moves for the right reasons. And it should be a combination of transformation sounds incredible. Maybe I've got to hit the level. I've gone as far as I can in my current organization, and I'm ready for a new challenge, and they don't have it right now, and that's why I'm looking. And my family and I are up for a move, right? So it's just got to fit, and it can't be solely on compensation.
Yeah.
Right. And the other advice I'd have for candidates is, behavior-wise, make sure you're not burning bridges, right? You can't do it. Burning bridges with your current employer, your future employer, or a trusted recruiter that you've been working with, and because it's just going to come back around at you at some point. Right. So, just make the move for the right reasons. That's it. That's what I tell you. And the rest should fall into place.
Yeah. But when it comes to looking for that opportunity, if someone is shifting from passive to active candidate, there's job postings out on different employer websites versus, for example, going to your website and submitting a resume and trying to start that relationship with somebody at Stiles or a retained search firm is a path maybe that's a path people might not think about if they're thinking, well, just look on the company websites. The recruiter is certainly a different path.
Yeah, a different path. I think but the same reason they move from passive to or the reason that they're moving from passive to active, there should be consistency in that thought, right? Around why am I doing this? What is it about my current situation I'm not enjoying? Is it location? Is it the culture isn't right? Is it that I feel like I'm being underutilized? And it could be I feel like I'm being underpaid, right? For the job I'm asking, they're asking me to continue to do more and more, yet my compensation isn't increasing, right? And just be, as you're thinking about if you're going to move from passive to active, be thinking about those things. Why am I really looking? What am I really looking for? Those are the conversations you should be having with a trusted recruiter or a firm, and say, hey, just keep me in mind. This is ideal, but if you find something like this, I'm willing to flex. And because as soon as you get serious about a potential new role, a good recruiter is going to dig into all those motivations. Mm-hmm. Because, if a client company and a recruiter come to the conclusion that you're just doing it for compensation, they're likely to walk away. Mm-hmm. Because it's not good for the client company, it's not good for the recruiter, and it's in the end, it's not good for the candidate either.
Sure.
So just be thoughtful about why you're making those moves, and play it out and talk to people about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then, I want to get your reaction, Jake, to, it seems like, advice that I would give people if they're not looking for a change and a recruiter reaches out to you, email or LinkedIn message, and you're not looking, it seems like it's good form to not just delete or blow off the message, that you can either make suggestions about other people in your network, or even just, is it good advice to at least reply and reach out and say, well, I'm not looking right now, but like what should somebody do to try to build a relationship with a recruiter that might be helpful in the future?
Yeah. Hey, that's it. Hey, I've only got about a minute to talk here, and I'm not looking. Maybe tell me what you're looking for, and I'll keep it in mind. And if I think of anybody, I'll certainly send them your way. And in the future, I'd like to stay in touch. It's pretty easy, right? Pretty easy stuff. And a lot of the work we're doing, Mark, is executive level. So those, and for us, it's typically, if it's a new candidate that we haven't talked to, we probably have connections to them already that they've figured out, and we figured out. And it's, those are great conversations. It can be, hey, I understand you're not looking, but is there anybody in your network you think might for whom this might appeal? And they're typically very, very gracious with their time, right? And same for us. They may call us with questions around the market, or they make and we'll take the time to chat with them as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, on the follow up, you talked about compensation and the fact that a correction might be coming. It would be a correction to, like, what have been the trends? You're seeing a trend of increasing compensation that goes in line with increased demand for talent then?
Yeah. So I think there's obviously been pretty significant increases in compensation, and in situations where we've had candidates have been actively looking, and they've received offers which have been good, maybe above typical increases, which is the norm in this market. But then they receive a counteroffer, an exorbitant counteroffer from their current employer, and they take it. Those are some of the corrections that I think you're going to see, right? I think those, and I couldn't tell you when. I just instinctively, I think we feel that that's going to happen at some point. And if you're leaving yourself out there as the highest paid person on the team by a long way, and we have a theory about counteroffers too, right? If you accept a counteroffer, right, your company obviously knew that you were looking and something wasn't going on. And if they don't take the time to really understand what the issue was, and yet they just give you the counteroffer, you may be short. It may not be a long career, right? But so I again, just instinctively, as we talk about it as a team, there will be a correction for that type of stuff. I mean, it's just bound to happen.
Yeah. So when it comes to counteroffers, I mean, there's a school of thought. There's advice that floats around that says it's a bad idea to accept a counteroffer. If you've told your current employer that you're leaving, that accepting a counteroffer can lead to issues down the road. What are your thoughts? Is that general advice, or is it more situational than saying never accept a counteroffer?
Look, I think it's situational, right? I think it's very situational. But again, if you've moved from passive to active and you're really consistent on why you're making the move, then a counteroffer probably doesn't make sense.
Uh-huh.
Unless the company says, well, I didn't realize that, we'd love to hang on. And you weren't looking because, the candidate wasn't looking because they didn't like the culture. Uh-huh. Right. And the company says, well, why don't we do this? Right. And it kind of hits 8 out of the 10, then maybe it makes sense. But, again, just be consistent on your thinking and why you're making the move. Uh-huh. And I think if you accept a counteroffer and it goes against all that prior consistent thinking, then it's probably not the right move.
Yeah. So Jake, as we wrap up here, tell us a little bit more about the types of companies that Stiles Associates work with. I know it's across different industries, but talking about smaller, medium, large size companies, the profile of the ownership, how many of them are public, private equity companies?
It's Mark, it's a pretty wide variety, right? So we work with companies of just about all sizes. So we certainly work with large publicly traded companies, domestically and abroad. But we're also easily 50+% of our work is for private equity portfolio companies that can range from, again, 25 million to multi-billion international organizations, right? So it's a really wide range of companies that we support. And then industry-wise, quite a bit of work still in manufacturing, 70% probably still in manufacturing, but that's every type of manufacturing you can think of, whether it be food or chemicals or it be discrete, large commercial vehicles to bicycles to again food. It's all over it's all over the map. Sure. And then obviously we do quite a bit of work in healthcare and have for a number of years. And then but we're also doing work just in straight service industry, whether it be financial services, insurance. It's more transactional environments. So we're very capable and have a lot of experience in those areas. And so the calls really come as a result of our ability to identify transformational executives that can walk into a number of different environments and drive the right results and engagement levels. Right. So we're not. That's just how it works for us. Uh-huh. So we're fairly spread out.
Yeah. And as you work with candidates, it seems like we've already touched on some of the leaps somebody might make in their career from one company to another, from one type of manufacturing to another. There might also be that leap of, let's say, working for a private equity owned company for the first time. Are there any different considerations that you see for somebody who is possibly taking that step in their career?
Yeah. I think again, it's understanding how you like to work, mm-hmm. and what your expectations are and what you're trying to accomplish in your own career. The pace typically in private equity can be quite a bit faster mm-hmm. than in a publicly traded organization. So you need to recognize that, and if that's something, if you've been working in publicly traded organizations for a long time, and if it's an organization that has red tape and a lot of bureaucracy, and you want to move at a faster pace, then that might be a good reason to look. Mm-hmm. But again, a lot of the executives that we've worked with, let's say specifically on the private equity side, they spent the earlier portions of their career in publicly traded companies, uh-huh. getting very, very solid training and the foundation needed to be successful moving forward. Right. So there's it just depends on where you're going. But I think that's the biggest difference is typically can be the pace.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, Jake, thank you for being here on the podcast today. Again, our guest has been Jake Stiles, CEO of Stiles Associates. If you are looking to hire, if you are a candidate looking for a change, you can reach out to them. Their website is leanexecs.com if you want to learn more, or at least start that conversation.
This has been a great first introduction to, this is our first time doing this, so it was enjoyable.
Okay, well, good. Well, Jake, thanks again. Thanks again for being a guest.
You're welcome.
Well, again, to learn more about Jake and Stiles Associates, look for links in the show notes. You can go to leanexecs.com, or you can go to leanblog.org/456.
Thanks for listening. This has been the Lean Blog Podcast. For Lean news and commentary updated daily, visit www.leanblog.org. If you have any questions or comments about this podcast, email Mark at leanpodcast@gmail.com.